Hey you guys, good morning. It's me, Cedrice here. It's Monday morning again. It's funny how I keep filming these vlogs on Monday morning, but that just seems to be how it's worked out. Last time I did my first vlog, I actually got up and did my makeup really pretty and did my hair for you guys. I was planning on doing that again, but it just didn't work out. I have a 13-year-old that's sick, and we all slept in this morning, and it just didn't happen. And then I thought, well, I don't have to do it this morning, but I've kind of committed to somebody that I would get this done because there's a specific purpose for this vlog. I had a friend of mine who reached out to me who is writing a research paper on sexual addiction. I don't know if it's specifically women and sex addiction or if it's just sex addiction, but she has the option of using someone who actually struggles with sexual addiction as one of her primary sources. And so she asked me if I would be that primary source, which of course I graciously accepted. I think that's really awesome. However, the catch is her silly professor requires that it be kind of like a face-to-face in-person interview. She's in Arizona, so that's not really possible. But we both kind of came up with the option of me filming me answering the questions that she had sent me. So that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna answer her questions. Here are the questions. Yay! So I'll just go ahead and start. I'll read the question, then I'll answer it so you guys know what's up to. And then the other thing is I can post this, on my blog. So if anybody else has a research paper and needs a primary source, then they can use it. It's kind of cool to think that I will be cited in a research paper. I hate citing, but this I'm kind of excited about. Pretty cool. Okay, so what is my name? My name is Cedrice Agla. I don't even care if you guys know my last name. It's spelled Sidreis, and my last name is Agla. That's German. That's my husband. How old are you? I am 38 years old, which means I'm turning 39 in August, and then just another year until I'm over the hill, which funny enough, it used to completely terrify me. Aging used to terrify me. Now I'm glad I'm getting older, and it may seem kind of morbid, but my outlook now is every year that I age is a year closer to going home, to seeing my Savior and dwelling in heaven. And so, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool. When do you realize this addiction started? Well, now I realize it started very, very, very young. I didn't actually realize I had an addiction until my early 30s, I think, is when I started to realize that as hard as I tried, I couldn't get away from it. I don't know how many times I told myself, I'll never do it again, I'll never do it again, or I'll just do it one more time, just one more time, or I'll quit next week, that's a good idea. I told myself that thousands of times, and it never, ever, ever, ever worked. Once I started to recognize the cycle, that I couldn't get out of it, no matter how hard I tried, I would always go back to it, that's when I was like, oh man, I need help. And so that was, I don't even think it might have been, I think it was actually late 20s rather than early 30s. It's actually when I started seeing a therapist and I started bringing it up with him. Next question. What made you to realize that you had this addiction? I think, like I just stated, that the cycle of addiction, once it finally became apparent to me that I couldn't stop, that was huge for me, that I was stuck, I couldn't stop. And I knew I needed help, but it was so scary to reach out to people because there's so much shame surrounding this addiction that I just thought, I can't tell anybody. Who can I tell? I could barely tell my therapist. And when I was working with that therapist, it took me a lot of courage to finally talk to my bishop. I talked to my therapist far before I ever talked to my bishop about it. So yeah, just not being able to get out of it is realize and I would do things like, I would put my kids in jeopardy. Like, I mean, this is really hard for me to admit, but it's truth, and so I have to say it. But I would view while my children were running around in the living room. I would neglect them to get my fix. Like, things like that is, the insanity of it and the unmanageability of it, and realizing that I was putting the people that I love the most at risk. Made me realize that, whoa, something's wrong here. My priorities are totally screwed up. In my mind, I knew that my priorities were screwed up, but my heart didn't care. And I knew that that conflict was a huge cause for concern. Okay, so next question. How long have you had this addiction prior to your realization? Okay, so my addiction started when I was, I don't even remember, like 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there. I remember it started, I was never abused as a child. I know that a lot of people's addictions start because of things they were introduced to at a young age through abuse. Mine started just out of unbridled curiosity. I would play with kids in the neighborhood, and it would start off with simple things like, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. I was just curious. And then I lost a lot of memory from the ages of 4, 5, and 6 until I was 9 or 10. I don't remember too much between, addiction-wise, between those ages. But I remember at 9 or 10 really acting out with children with things that I had seen on the TV. And at that point, something had switched. It was no longer curiosity. Like, things in my body were being aroused to the point where I was like, oh, this is interesting. Maybe I'll try it again. And so really young, 9 or 10, I was exposed to my first pornographic material about the age of 8. I had found something. And so yeah, and that I'd like to say is the case with most. I work with a lot of women in my recovery groups alone. I deal with 30 women at least per week at group, and between the two groups that I attend, and the majority of them, their addiction started at a very young age. So I think that's another thing that we can feel isolated and alone in, and that I'm a freak of nature because I started way young, No, everybody started young. So, let's see. Please tell me what treatments that you feel that have helped you to deal with this addiction. Okay, so like I said, I had therapy. My therapist, I saw him off and on for about 7 years. He didn't really help me. Like, he's a good guy. I don't want to rag on him. Like, I just think he was kind of out of his element dealing with addiction or my sexual addiction. With him, I felt like I was throwing stuff in a pot and just stirring it. Like, there was no resolution. There was no solution ever. I would go in his office and just whine, and he would listen. But that was it. There was no work that was being done. There wasn't anything there. And that's not to say all therapists would be like this. I actually have a therapist now too, and she's been very good for me. And therapy is essential. Not essential. It can be a really good recovery tool. However, nothing is going to work without the Savior. Nothing's going to work without, or a higher power. I'm going to throw the higher power out there because this is for a research paper. It's not going to work without that. And so if you're not LDS or if you're not Christian, using any sort of 12-step program is probably your best bet. The 12-step program is really finally what helped me when I found it 3.5 years ago. It's the LDS Addiction Recovery Program. I sunk myself into it. I sunk myself into the steps. I live and I breathe those steps. Those steps are principles to my life. They aren't just like a 12-week course that I took. I live and I breathe those steps, and because they are steps of the atonement. It's pretty awesome. I do also remember at one point when I finally realized that I had an addiction, looking up, and this was years ago, this was like 7-8 years ago, maybe even longer, but I was looking up, resources for sexual addiction recovery, and at the time there was nothing. There was something up in Salt Lake, I don't remember what it was called, but I called the guy and it was like $100 a session. It was like $600 for, to go to group therapy or like this conference, or I don't remember specifically, but whatever it was way out of my budget, way out of my resource. Like, we were so dirt poor at that time. And so, that's kind of how a lot it was. So number one, no one ever talked about it. And number two, when you did, you had to be rich to get better. So I think there was kind of no chance there. But now it's a lot different. There's so many resources for it. There's, multiple 12-step programs. I know at my university alone, and this probably goes for a lot of universities, that there's little to no cost counseling sessions there, which has been really helpful for me. That's actually where I have my counselor. So those are some options that are out there. Okay, next question. Does this addiction have an effect on the ones you are close to, and how so? Yes, very much so. Prior to recovery, I was a huge isolator. I was shut off from everybody emotionally. I felt so innately invaluable and worthless, and not just that, but just like gross to be, like, if someone touched me, it's like my skin would sear because I felt like my ickiness was getting on them. And so how could I possibly connect with people if I was feeling that way about myself? And so absolutely, yes, I had no friends. If I did have friends, it was completely superficial. At work, I was not a very nice person. I was in a supervisorial position, and I was really mean to a lot of people, and I really regret that and feel bad for that. And with my family, I was not a good mom. I would, like I had mentioned before, I would neglect my children, and my husband I couldn't connect with, like a lot of things like that. It's impossible for people who are stuck in addiction to have healthy relationships. It's not just, it's most likely that you're not going to have a good relationship. No, it's impossible, because when we numb through acting out, we don't just numb our pain, we numb all emotion. Those high levels of those neurotransmitters that flood our brain, dopamine, it numbs all emotion. It is impossible to feel joy and to feel happiness. It is impossible to connect. It is impossible to feel like, anything at that point. And so there's this process that has to happen in order to get to that happy state. We have to go through this sober detox period, and we have to have a period of sobriety for our brain to like heal, and our chemical thresholds to reset to like more normal levels. So when we do experience everyday joys like walking in the sunshine or like wrestling with our kids, those things again will bring us joy. So yeah, anyway, that was all the questions. Oh, she says, is there anything I want to add to this? I don't think so. I think this video is long enough as it is. However, if there are any more questions that you guys have, or once she sees this, if she has, then she's more than welcome to add to this, and I'll video some more. Or if you guys want to hear anything specific from me, I'll video that too. I'm open to that. Anyway, I should probably go, because I gotta go to work. Work is right over there. Anyway, you guys are great. I love you so much. I'll talk to you later. Bye.